Hi, how are you going? Now, today's topic is not for the faint of heart. It's a little bit more advanced topic. Feel free to watch though, even if you're a beginner, but it is more suited to someone who is more advanced with Google Analytics and understands some of the technical concepts. So we're going to talk about, or basically we're going to answer the question, what do we do if data isn't aggregating correctly in Google Analytics? Before we go down this path, let me just explain what that even means in the first place. All right, so in Google Analytics, you might be familiar with the format. You tend to have words on the left and numbers on the right. So the words on the left, those are called dimensions, and it will include things like page names. You might have events, so it will be saying the user did a particular thing. You might have information like which country someone came from, or what product name they purchased, or what their gender is. These are all text-based fields, and these are all on the right-hand side of any graph. Then you have metrics, which are the numbers, and they come on the right-hand side of your graph. So you'll see sessions, you'll see users, you'll see time-based things such as session duration. You'll see percentages like conversion rate and bounce rate. Those are all percentages. And then you can also see things like timestamps as well. So you can have dates in there as a metric. Yeah, dates are a bit of an interesting one depending on how that's set up. But generally you have, just imagine it as the dimensions are text, which are on the left, and the metrics are numbers, which are on the right. Okay, so what you'll discover in Google Analytics, or the whole main point of Google Analytics, is that Google Analytics automatically aggregates all the numbers together for a particular piece of text on the left. So by aggregates, I mean that whichever date range you pick, it will automatically recalculate the numbers so that the numbers all add up. You don't have to see line by line every single hit that happened on your website and add them up yourself. So if you had, okay, so let's think, for example, so let's think about page name. Now, if you had no aggregation, you would see a hit on every page, and it would say, one user looked at this page, 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 and it would go on and on and on, and the same page name would be repeated for as many users looked at that page. And then you'd have to then like manually add it up. So you don't have to do that with Google Analytics. Google Analytics will say, right, for this page and this date range, this is how many people looked at it. And it just does it all behind the scenes on the Google Analytics servers. All right, so that is really, really helpful. And one of the main reasons why we want to apply filters in order to clean up some of the data so that you can have good aggregation. The problem happens when, let's say you didn't have good filters applied, or you change the way data was being collected, either by changing the website or changing the analytics. Either one can do it. Or there's probably plenty of other situations where it can happen. But what you can have is, let's say you have two pieces of text which really were supposed to be the same thing, but they've now been separated. So I'll give you an example. So let's say you have a page name, which is, I don't know, we'll call it home page. What a lousy name. My imagination certainly isn't there today. But like, let's say it's literally called home dash page, right? And then let's say, this is a terrible example, but let's just say you're renaming your homepage. I swear you would never ever do this, but let's say you renamed it to home dash page 2. Now, if you had your analytics and you compared over a date range in which that was changed, then you'd have half of your data on home dash page and half of your data on home dash page 2. and you might get the feeling that less people had seen your homepage than was actually the case. Now, I know that's like the most contrived example, because first of all, you wouldn't name your homepage home-page, and second of all, you wouldn't name it, rename it. So let's think of something else. So have you ever seen on an e-commerce store, when you order by price or order by relevance or something like that, it puts some text inside the URL to tell the e-commerce software what to do. So 1 minute you're shopping for shoes, and then the next minute it says shoes, and then it will say order by price. Have you ever seen that? Now, if you have seen it before, you know what I'm talking about, then this is an instance of where aggregation can go badly, badly wrong if you haven't got any filters applied. So in my agency, I always have a filter that strips out all of these order by in some views for reporting, because all of these little, so they're called parameters, they completely mess up your aggregation. But let's say you didn't have those filters applied yet, and you had a page called shoes, and you had some people going to the page were just looking at shoes page, and then other people going to the page were doing order by price. And it could even get worse. They could be ordering by price ascending, or ordering by price descending, or ordering by something else. You've got all of these different things on the back. Each one of those will be aggregated differently. So you're going to have shoes, you're going to have shoes with order by price, you're going to have shoes with order by price ascending, blah, blah, blah. They're all going to have different numbers of users. And if you want to find out how many people looked at the shoes page, now you're screwed. Honestly, you're screwed, because now there's like 10 different permutations of the shoes page, all with different numbers of people next to them. Makes it a big mess. All right, so rule number 1, apply your filters. But if you have not got any filters and someone asks you how many people looked at shoes, you can still do it, and you can do it really easily. All right, and you don't have to add it up with a calculator. So rant aside, what you want to do in this situation, if you have scenarios where the numbers aren't aggregating because your dimensions are different, you can fix up the dimensions to make them all the same. Yay! And then it will automatically aggregate. But you can't do it in Google Analytics itself, because in Google Analytics, once data is in there, it's in there. But you can do it somewhere else. You can do it in a tool called Google Data Studio. All right, so what you want to do is you want to go to Data Studio, and this tool, it's just part of the Google marketing platform. So it's the same kind of way as, so when you go to Google Analytics, you type in analytics.google.com. If you want to go to Data Studio, you type in datastudio.google.com, go there, create a new report, and, or you might already have one, but for this exercise, just creating a new report, you want to import your Google Analytics as a data source. So what will happen is you'll click on data sources, you'll pick your Google Analytics and press connect. And then you will want to add whatever the field is that you are trying to aggregate. You can add that as the dimension. And then whatever you are trying to see in terms of the numbers, you add them as a metric. Now, this will not fix it yet. So you're still going to have, so let's, with that example, we've got page and then users. We're now going to have all the pages listed with all of these random parameters, and we're going to have the numbers of users for each one. But now what you can do is you can fix it in Data Studio, even though you can't fix it on Google Analytics. So there's a couple of commands in Google Data Studio, which if you are a bit more advanced with working with Google Analytics, these are your friends. And so the commands are called replace, regexp, replace, which is regexp _ replace, and then case. And what these do is they let you change your data so that the numbers make sense. All right, so so basically the what they do, so let's look at replace. So what replace does is it lets you pick out a particular piece of text and replace it with something else. So let's say you have, I don't know, let's say you have, why don't we go back to that example that I said, that really crappy example with home-page and home-page 2. All right, this is a perfect example. So with replace, you can say replace the page name, and if you see home-page 2, replace that with home-page and save that. Then when it goes to aggregate it, it will remove home-page 2 and replace it with home-page, and it will correctly aggregate as though that home-page 2 never existed. Now the regex replace one, that's a little bit trickier. What you can actually do with it is you can assign what's called a regular expression, and it's a rule-based way of determining which characters it's going to search for in a string. So what you could do, so let's go back to that silly example. So let's say you had actually created a home-page 2, a home-page 3, a home-page 4, a home-page 5, and people go to all of these different home pages, and you just wanted to know how many people went to the home page. You could do a regular expression replace, so regex underscore replace, where you said the dimension is the page name, and then you want to be looking for the number, and you can do a regular expression to say any number between 0 and 9, replace that with blank. So if you want to get rid of something, you do so by replacing it with blank. I do this all the time, but it's hard to explain when you're just talking it out. But basically, you can just clear out things that you don't want by replacing them with blank, and you can also stack replaces on to each other. So let's say you want to like completely change the name of something, but first you want to get rid of some weird numbers or weird letters that are in there. You can replace all the weird stuff with blank, and then you can then that will aggregate, but then you can wrap that in another place, and you can wrap that in another place, and wrap that in another place. Sometimes I have strings that look like replace, bracket, replace, bracket, replace, bracket, replace, bracket, and then a whole lot of things that I'm replacing. So hey, I'm a computer programmer, so it all makes sense to me, but for you it probably doesn't make sense if you're not a computer programmer, especially if you're a beginner. So I totally understand that, but just letting you know you can do it. So hey, if you're in SEO, or if you're working with Google Analytics data all the time, you don't have to be a data scientist or a programmer for you to do it. You just need to understand the syntax, and once you've got one, you can just plug it in pretty much the same every time. All right, so there's one more that I will quickly mention, and that is case. And a case statement is, look, in programming, it's also known as there's case in programming as well, but the more common way of calling it is like an if statement. And what you're doing with a case is you're saying, if you have this kind of data, then make it look like this. Or if you have this other data, then make it look like this other thing. So what you can do is you can, how do I describe this? Basically, actually, a good example is countries. So let's say you want to, let's say you've got particular countries that have to meet some requirement that you have in terms of, I think in Google Analytics, some of the Middle Eastern countries they have listed in there might be different geographically to the way that you might want to just call them all Middle East. Yeah, I've done this exact example. So a client said to me, right, well, I want to know what happened for Australia. I want to know what happened with UK. I want to know what happened with USA, and I want to know what happened in the Middle East. So then Australia was easy because Australia is just one country in Google Analytics. But then Middle East, there's like a million different countries in the Middle East. So we ended up aggregating them using a different way. So we ended up finding out which geographical region it was, and then if it's in that geographical region, we were able to change the data to just say Middle East instead of naming like, you know, all the different Middle Eastern countries, which was going to, like, you end up with users against all the individual countries, whereas we just wanted to replace them all with the Middle East. So that's one example of using a case statement. And in that case, that's pretty much the only real way to do it well, because you can't, if you're going to use a replace, you'd have to replace them all individually anyway, which becomes a mess. All right, well, I don't know if I've just like completely confused everybody or maybe you're following along with me and going, wow, I never thought of doing that. So this comes in handy. Like, you don't have to be analysing data in the Middle East to make use of this. If you were looking at something that you did last quarter and then you suddenly realise, oh no, my analytics was broken and I'm trying to work out how many users did something and it's split into 3 different camps when it was supposed to be split into just 1, then you can quickly, instead of just using Google Analytics, you can quickly pull the data into Data Studio, fix it up using replace statements and export it out again, and no one would ever be the wiser. So I do this all the time. Once you practice that, it only takes a couple of minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I'm going to cover on that particular topic. Over time, I might add some of these things into the blog post. So at this point in time, you probably have a fairly short blog post and I won't go into all the detail, but over time, I'll just check on the blog post and I might have exact descriptions on how to do this with actual examples that you can copy. All right, have a wonderful day. And if you want tips from me about things that you can do with Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, Google Data Studio, Google Ads, etc., anything to do with Google, then you can follow me on, well, basically you should subscribe to me on either on YouTube or on my email newsletter. That's probably the best way. So you can go to www.petramanos.com and just subscribe to the email newsletter and you should get tips like this about 3 times a week. Okay, well, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day and catch you soon. Bye.